In today's show, I share with you the 3 best ways to become resilient to change. There are many ways to face change, but the key is, are you using one of the best ones? Stay tuned. Welcome back to my show where I help high achievers get promoted, get productive, and get the corner office. Make sure to like and subscribe to this episode because every Wednesday I release a new episode that will help you accelerate your career. So in today's episode, I'm sharing with you the 3 best strategies to help you become more resilient to change. Change can test your resilience, decrease your productivity, cause you to lose focus, and increase stress and anxiety, and can even keep you up at night. And we know when you're not sleeping well and you're waking up at night with all these thoughts about work rumination, it can actually decrease your resilience even further. So having a plan and some successful, important strategies that you can use, productive strategies to face change, can increase your resilience and increase your performance over the long haul. Here are a few truths about change that we all need to keep in mind. Change often represents the abyss, the unknown. And the unknown, to many people, there's a narrative about the unknown being bad for you, or being scary, or the unknown representing something that we don't know that's going to happen, but it's definitely going to be bad. Or often we can choose to assign a much more positive narrative, because when we do have the narrative of change representing possibility, we automatically give ourselves a little bit of boost of resilience. Also, when you believe that change is bad, this automatically decreases your resilience because you think it's going to be a bad experience this change is going to be so bad for me, and I think it's going to be bad for all of us. But instead, if you embrace resilience as, hey, this change represents a new opportunity for improvement, to learn and to grow, you're automatically going to increase your resilience level. So if you embrace those 2 mini truths about change, you're automatically going to increase your resilience. And I've got 3 more key strategies coming your way right now. The first big strategy is to identify your contingency plan. A contingency plan is a backup in case the main plan doesn't work. And it turns out when you have one identified, even if you don't use it, you're going to become more resilient to change. You're going to feel looser. You're going to feel more positive, more flexible. And you're going to feel like, hey, no matter what happens, I can respond because I've already thought through this process. What often happens in companies, and recently happened to one of my clients, is a long-term executive at the top of the organization left. And this sort of left really a power vacuum, right? They weren't sure who was going to fill this role, if there was going to be a big reorganization. And suddenly the organization tension level dramatically increased. And when the anxiety level increases, oftentimes the resilience level starts to fall. Who's going to be the new leader? What's it mean to me? What's it mean to the team? What's it mean to the organization? What's it mean to my career? Am I going to survive here, or do I need to start looking for another job? All those questions don't really lead to much resilience. But the key is, if you're able to think through it from a contingency plan perspective, you're going to automatically boost your resilience level. So this specific leader started gathering the highlights of his team's contributions to the organization. So when the new person started, or if a reorg happened, he could automatically serve up to that leader the impact that he and his team were making. 2, he began to tie up all the loose ends on different projects that had been hanging out there, different deadlines that they might miss or they were a little bit delayed on. He made a big push with he and his team to close those out. He also began tapping into his LinkedIn network about future possibilities. Not necessarily looking for another job at this point, but just letting them know about the change that was going on in the organization and just doing brief check-ins. So if he needed to tap into his network, they'd be ready. And then on a very personal level, he actually sat down for an hour and did a very thorough personal financial analysis, because if he lost his job due to some kind of reorganization, although he wasn't really fearful that he'd lose his job, it made him feel a lot better and more resilient to know how much savings he had set aside in case he needed to depart the organization, and how much time and runway he'd have to look for another opportunity. So the simple way to think about creating a contingency plan is just to simply fill in this blank. If this doesn't work out, I will blank. You can fill it in, well, I will do this. I will look for another job. I will work with my network. I will do all these different things. So whatever it is, if it's a job change, if it's a project change, thinking through this contingency plan will automatically make you feel and be more resilient. The number 2 strategy is to take it in bite-sized chunks. Now, we're not literally biting, but sometimes it can help to think about the old adage of how do you eat an elephant, although it's kind of disgusting, but how do you eat an elephant? Of course, the punchline of the joke is one bite at a time. And how do you deal with a big change on a big project or a big change in your life? You boil it down to one bite at a time. It makes it so much easier. We often know this, but it's often hard to implement. Instead, we end up trying to boil the ocean. And that's another funny metaphor. Boiling the ocean is virtually impossible unless we get extreme global climate change. But boiling the ocean is really a metaphor for taking on a change that's too big. And when we think about a change in too big a level, at a very high level, it becomes overwhelming. But when we boil it down into bite-sized chunks we can actually address, it becomes instantly less stressful and we become more resilient. So if you wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and you're ruminating about a big problem, take a sheet of paper out, write down all the different activities that you need to do related to that project or that big change that you're facing in your personal life, and just break it down into little tiny mini projects and mini steps. This is incredibly effective, again, to decrease your stress level and help you become more resilient because you're taking action in a very methodical, process-driven way, and you're taking out a lot of the emotional overwhelm and allowing you to focus on what's next. So change isn't managed well at the high level. Change is managed well at the lower level. So the change may be happening globally, but where you and I come in and where the focus and productivity comes in is when we take that and we break it down into little pieces that we can individually affect. Oftentimes, in these days, technology disruptions are the norm, and it can tremendously change your group's responsibilities and organizations on a dime. But when you think through it at a global level and you begin to break it down into bite-sized chunk level, you can immediately increase your resilience. Now, before I get into the 3rd strategy, make sure you stick around to the end because I've got a secret bonus strategy that I'm going to share with you that you can do today that will immediately increase your resilience. Number 3 is to focus on the relationships and the learning that you're gaining. When change comes, it's easy to begin thinking about all the things that we're losing, right? We're trying to deal with all the craziness, right? We're losing control, we're losing relationships, and we're losing money or responsibilities, or things are becoming much riskier in our environment. It is so simple to think about those. However, to increase your resilience to change, if you begin thinking about the opportunities that will come from this, the new relationships and the learning that you're going to gain from going through the change, you will notice that you're becoming more resilient, much more likely to bounce back, and even much more excited about the change in and of itself. When the global pandemic hit, this is an amazing example of how many people, including myself, were focusing on what we were losing in this. Business opportunities, speaking opportunities, lots of these things were going on, and they were just sort of sliding through our hands like sand through the hourglass. However, it turns out the pandemic represented a lot of opportunity, and myself and others included, when we began to focus on, hey, this disruption is going to create new opportunities, I'm going to focus on those and begin looking for those and choosing to notice them. Instantly, I became more resilient. Also, many of my clients did and achieved more success through the pandemic. And one of the biggest things in this is that change also represents great opportunities to deepen our relationships. For example, during the pandemic and the lockdown period, my kid became much more interactive with kids in our neighborhood and really deepened those relationships. And I even deepened my relationships with other certain business partners. We grew together, but because we had to, and we depended on one another much more. And this deepened those relationships, which are still continuing today. And this is also the case for many of my clients who began to reach out among their supply chain partners and other people in their organizations, and they deepen those relationships too, so they gain new relationships and deepen the ones they have. I promised a big bonus strategy so simple that you can implement it right now. Now, I do believe the 3 that I just offered you can also implement those immediately. So go ahead and pick one and implement that today. But the 4th one here, the secret bonus tip here, is just to add 30 more minutes of sleep to your day. When change happens, we often need to rest more, okay? We need to get a little more rest to allow us to build up our resilience to respond with a clear head tomorrow. Research shows us that well-rested people are more resilient to change. And so take that and try it in your day and notice how that impacts your resilience. So I've covered 3 big strategies plus a secret bonus strategy on how to increase your resilience. I believe these are some of the best ways to do that. Number 1 being to identify your contingency plan. Number 2, to take on the change in bite-sized chunks. And 3 is to focus on the learning and relationships that you're gaining. Now, if you really want to increase your resilience and accelerate your career, make sure to stick around for the next video.